There's this constant pressure to hold ourselves up to this impossible standard. It's an impossible standard, beating myself up and being horrible to myself. And that is not how you grow your confidence.
You are in a good direction, and I'm going to go deeper.
Yes. I practiced radical acceptance with this moment right here, this moment, this present moment. I accept it fully. Small thing, but a really powerful thing that we can all do.
How many times have we felt we are not good enough? How many times have we compared to others and have fallen short? That's the story of today's guest, Bhavna Toor. She went from being that shy person always at the back of the room to working in Wall Street, and today she's championing mindful leadership. Today's episode, we are going to cover topics such as how to find your purpose, how to be more self-aware, how to be more self-disciplined, and how can you empower others. I hope you enjoy this episode. Stay tuned. Bhavna, it's such a pleasure to have you on the show. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. It's such a pleasure to be here. Yes.
All right. So I think a good place to start is to understand what inspired you to start working with mindful leadership.
I think my journey towards mindfulness and mindful leadership began almost 10 years ago. I was living in New York, had a career in finance. So on the surface, everything looked great. I was making good money, living comfortably in the most glitzy city in the world. But on the inside, to be honest, there was this growing sense of discontentment within me that this couldn't be it. There was the voice inside me just kept getting louder and louder and louder, questioning if this was the answer. I thought about how, yes, I've been part of this rat race for as long as I can remember, but where am I running to? And how can I be sure that wherever I'm running to is the answer, that it will give me that sense of meaning and purpose that I was looking for? And because I knew this wasn't it, I knew I had to do something very, very different. And so especially after business school, when no other career path was appealing to me, I made this somewhat dramatic decision at the time to move to India, a country I hadn't lived in for decades, because I knew I had to give myself that time and space to find my own path. And so the next few years in India became a spiritual odyssey for me, where I was just seeking, searching, finding answers to all the big questions in life that we all wrestle with. Who am I? Why am I here? What am I meant to do? And at that time when I was searching, a friend of mine suggested I try Vipassana meditation. It was not something I had ever tried before, but I was ready to try anything. And so I jumped into the deep end of the pool and signed up for a 10-day Vipassana meditation program in Bodh Gaya, the same city where Buddha famously gained enlightenment. So I thought I could fast track my enlightenment by going to the same city. And the aha moment I had during that program was that for years I was seeking and searching so desperately for answers, but I was always looking outside of myself, reading every book I could read, taking every program I could find, when all I had to do was create that time and space to go within, to look for that truth within, to find that wisdom within. As Rumi famously said, you wander from room to room to room, searching for that diamond necklace that was always around your neck. And so for me, my journey to living and leading mindfully has really been about training myself to see that necklace, to value it and appreciate it, and also to help others find their truth and wisdom.
Wow, that's such an inspiring journey. I think it would be nice to understand. So, How did you find your purpose, and how can people also find their purpose?
That's such a big and important and a question that I think we all think about. I think every single person I've ever met is trying to find the meaning of their life. And in my journey, if there's one thing I've realized, is that the meaning of our life is not something that's out there for us to discover and find, but we have to choose to give meaning to our lives. Now, how do we do that? For me, it was very much about finding that meaning at the intersection of my curiosity and my compassion. Now, what is that? Well, first, curiosity. I always ask people to think about, okay, what are you curious about? Not what you're passionate about. Because I think that word passion can be intimidating at times, especially if you haven't found your passion. But if you're a human being, you are innately curious about something. You think about something. What is that? For me, when I asked myself that question, initially when I moved to India, in my mind, I thought, okay, I'm going to go into a career into social impact investing because that seemed like a natural extension from my background in finance, and I thought I could use my finance for social good. But then when I actually asked myself, what was I spending my time thinking about, reading about, exploring with no external pressure, no expectations whatsoever? And in my room, I looked at this stack of books piled high from floor to ceiling. Every single book was about personal growth, mindfulness, leadership. And that's when I was like, okay, I think this is trying to tell me something. I think this is what is naturally calling me. And so that's where I found my curiosity. And then the second question is, once you find what you are curious about, how do you take that thing that you're interested in and then build it and build it and build it to the point where you can help others? That's compassion. Compassion is wanting to reduce the suffering of others. Compassion is working towards the well-being of others. And so when I thought about, okay, how do I take this passion, this curiosity that I have for personal growth work and mindfulness, how do I help others? And who would I like to help? For me, the answer was clear. I wanted to help other women because I knew the kind of struggles I had gone through in finding my voice. And I knew, because of the kind of cultural forces you see around the world still, whether it's US, India, wherever, that women do struggle in both finding and expressing their authenticity. And I believed mindfulness could be the answer for other women as well. And so that's how I found my purpose at the intersection of my curiosity and compassion.
Well, I love your journey, and I really resonate because I also went through the same, and I think it's so interesting when there's so much noise in our head, and we're always looking outside. Right. But when we go inside, that's when all the answers happen. Yes. And that's also what happened with me. I think my necklace, also I found my necklace when I went through a process of meditation, and I also found a lot of what I was going to do came in that process. So
lovely.
So nice. So now this brings us to mindful leadership. Mm-hmm. So what is it, and what differs from the traditional leadership?
I think at the fundamental level, mindfulness is different in two ways. One, mindfulness is about, fundamentally, it's about living and leading with self-awareness. Learning about yourself, understanding yourself. I think it was Lao Tzu who said, understanding others is intelligence. Understanding yourself is wisdom. So it's self-awareness that gives us that path to wisdom. So that's the first thing. The second thing, mindfulness is about leading from within. understanding that all change begins with us. So in a traditional approach to leadership, we ask questions like, how do I lead others? How do I motivate others? How do I create an inspiring vision for others? In mindfulness, you take that lens and you turn it towards yourself and you ask, how can I lead myself? How can I motivate myself? How can I create an inspiring vision for myself so that I can then do it for others? So instead of externalizing challenges and thinking that the problem and the solution lies outside of me, you ask, what can I do? So instead of, oh, I have this really demanding boss, I don't know what to do with, you ask, how can I be more assertive with what my needs are? Instead of, if only my spouse or my partner or my child wasn't so difficult, you ask, how can I show up more fully? How can I create that welcoming and nurturing space for others also to show up more fully?
Yeah, and especially today where there's so much uncertainty, right?
Yes.
So you really need to first really understand yourself so that you are able to navigate this uncertainty. Really nice. But what makes you believe that it's mindful leadership is really effective?
I think it's a combination of three things. One, my own experience, my own journey, how the more and more I have sought to live and lead more mindfully, how I found greater peace, greater happiness, greater success as well in my life. I've seen this now working with thousands of women, and all of this is also supported by considerable research. At this point, there have been, if I'm not mistaken, over 16,000 scientific articles and studies published in journals around the benefits of mindfulness and how it can help all of us. So I think all of that is really pointing to the same thing, that when all of us take the time to do that inner work, to go within, to focus on that personal growth, that is how we magnify our impact in the world.
Okay, so one is your personal experience. Also, you saw so many thousands of women, which it worked with them, but also there's scientific articles showing like the importance of mindfulness in business. That's really cool. I could see that you were when I asked you this question, you were very passionate and you were feeling like, that's it, that's it.
That is the answer. Yes.
But so when you look at what's happening in business today, what breaks your heart?
I think what breaks my heart is that we're still living in a world where half the population of the world, which is women, are still struggling to find their place in the world. Just to give you a quick example, one of the programs that we run is a fellowship program for young women. This is women from 21 to 30, called Lead Like a Girl. It's a fellowship program where we offer scholarships to everyone, majority of the women. And this year in particular, we've been receiving applications from all around the world, women from Pakistan, Afghanistan, Nepal, Indonesia, all countries in Africa. And one of the questions we always ask is, tell us, what is that one thing you're struggling with that we can support you with? And woman after woman after woman, I've been reading these emails in my inbox over the last few weeks, and each of them breaks my heart because they're all saying the same thing. I don't know if I'm good enough. I don't know how I can do more. I'm struggling with self-doubt. I'm struggling with the imposter syndrome. I'm struggling with confidence. I'm struggling to find my voice. It's all pointing to the same thing. So how can we create a better world where everyone feels like they belong? And for me, that work has to focus on women because a vast majority of them are still struggling
And why do you think they are struggling?
I think it's a combination of two things. I think when it comes to self-doubt, for sure, it's universal. It's not just that women struggle with self-doubt. I know many, many men who also struggle with that. And a lot of that is just our internal wiring, our brain that predisposes us to pick out the negatives more than the positives, this negativity bias that we have. So for sure, part of it is just the wiring of our brain. But the second reason I do think is the cultural forces that we see in the world, the patriarchy, if you will, that gets women to internalize this notion of constantly wanting to prove themselves, constantly feeling like they need to prove that they're good enough in the workplace, at home, even physically. There's this constant pressure to hold ourselves up to this impossible standard. It's an impossible standard that we've all set up because we feel that is what is expected of us. We need to prove that we're twice as good as our male counterparts to be considered just as good. And because the bar is so high, we are constantly falling short. And because we're falling short, we constantly feel like we're failing and we're not good enough. So I think absolutely the cultural and societal conditioning plays a huge role in that.
So that's why also the self-awareness, not just in men but also women, it's a big part of what you think it's the solution today, right?
Yes, yes.
But what's happening today around this topic of, let's say, mindful leadership? What are some of the misconceptions and myths that you see around this topic?
So let's look at the current state of affairs. So if you look at the latest Women in the Workplace report that McKinsey came out with, what we now know is that for every woman that is joining an organization at a senior level, let's say a director level, 2 women are leaving the organization. Now, why is that happening? We've been asking this question posing this question to our community for 3 years in a row, asking the same question. What causes you to leave? Either move from one organization to another or leave the workforce altogether? Is it because you're leaving for personal reasons? You want to take care of your family or aging parents? Are you leaving because you just are burnt out and you want time out? Are you leaving for more challenging work or for better paying work? Or are you leaving because you feel undervalued? 3 years in a row, answer has not changed. 51% of all women have told us year after year after year they leave when they feel undervalued. So that begs the question, well, what will make you feel valued? What will get you to stay? And again, the answer time and time again is 1, I want a workplace that truly prioritizes my well-being. I want a workplace where I can work with flexibility. I have the flexible working options given the realities of my life. And third, I want a workplace that's truly in spirit, not just on paper, committed to creating that culture where everyone can belong, true diversity and inclusion. Yeah. What is that workplace? A workplace where everyone can belong is a compassionate workplace. Who creates a compassionate workplace? Compassionate leaders, mindful leaders, leaders who are self-aware, who are thinking deeply about how they can show up and create that welcoming and nurturing place where everyone feels like they're seen, they're heard, they're valued, they're respected.
Yeah, yeah. And how can we build that?
How do we create such a workplace? I do think the work begins with leaders because it all trickles down from there. In fact, whenever we've asked women, so when you join an organization, how do you know that this is a truly equitable, truly inclusive workplace. And one of the things a lot of people will always point to is, well, you look at the leaders, right? You look at what they are saying. You look at how they are showing up. You look at how they are treating that one woman who's in the room, who's perhaps is not getting an opportunity to speak, is being talked over, is being dismissed. How are they making sure that she's heard, she's included? So I do think the work begins with leaders, with male and female leaders, really doing that work to show up in that way and create that environment for everybody else.
Do you have any example of that you've seen any organization doing a really good job on creating that workplace that you are mentioning?
I think over the years, yes. I think that's one thing I will say, especially when I think about from where I started my career 20 years ago. There was very little talk, I would say, around diversity and inclusion to the extent there is today. So fortunately, yes, now my work has exposed me to several organizations where they are walking the walk, not just talking about this. And yes, it is all of the things that we've been talking about, how where leaders are truly role modeling mindful, compassionate leadership, practicing inclusion, not just at a high level, but your day-to-day, small, tiny, micro interactions, because that is really what makes a difference. Because again, when we ask women what causes them to leave, it's never just one or two big things. What they always say is it's a series of micro inequities and microaggressions that they experience over the course of their career. It's that classic death by 1,000 cuts. You flip that over to make anyone, woman, a person of any background, feel included. You have to focus on those many acts of micro inclusion, day to day, how we speak to someone, how we make them seen, make them feel heard, respected through every single interaction. So I think where there's truly organizations that truly create that kind of culture is where we've seen they're also experiencing tangible benefits in terms of high performance, in terms of greater innovation, all of the tangible outcomes that any business would want.
And what do you think are those benefits on focusing on mindful leadership?
I think the benefits are on multiple levels. I think if I start, we can look at the benefits on an individual level, and we can look at the benefits on a larger organizational or societal level. At the individual level, here is the thing, and one of the biggest things that I emphasize in my work, and what is a big cornerstone of mindfulness, is really practicing more than anything else, self-compassion. Self-compassion. Because going back to what we were talking about earlier, how as women we have internalized this notion that we're not good enough, we're so hard on ourselves. The only way to turn that around is to actually practice that self-compassion, fierce self-compassion, that no, I am enough. And in my own life, the more and more I've done that, because when I think about my journey, where I started, when I began my career, I was so painfully shy. You would not even know I was in the room. I was like a fly on the wall. And then I would be beating myself up, thinking, gosh, why did I not say a single thing in that meeting? So it became this vicious cycle of not showing up as I would like to show up, and then just beating myself up and being horrible to myself. And that is not how you grow your confidence. And on this mindful journey, what I've seen with myself as well as other women is the more and more you're coming from that place of compassion. What you are doing above all else is giving your mind this belief that it's safe for me to take risks. It's safe for me to speak up, share my voice, because even if things don't go well, and let people say whatever they may, let them judge me however they may, I am making this firm promise to myself that I am not going to judge myself. And when you take away that punishment of judgment, you start to, at least that's what happened with me, I started to speak up more. I started to assert myself more. I started to put myself out there more. I became more visible. I built my brand. I expanded my work. And I've seen this with women after women. That is what gives them the courage to show up more fully. It's really that self-compassion that leads to courage. So I think that is what happens at an individual level, and equally at an organizational and societal level as well. If you look at, for example, Amy Edmondson's work, where she talks about how the number one thing that allows teams, individuals, anyone to take more risks, to innovate more, is when you create psychological safety in an organization. What is psychological safety? Again, it's the same thing. You're creating a space of non-judgment. You can speak your mind, you can try different things, and if it doesn't work, I am not going to judge you. I am not going to judge you. And so again, psychological safety ties back to leaders, mindful and compassionate leaders, creating that sense of safety and belonging for everyone to show up more fully, try different things, speak their mind. So absolutely, these are it trickles to, and you see that ripple effect in so many ways.
So there's at individual level, and then also there's benefits also at a society level, at group level. I know you mentioned about, so you were this girl which was very shy and at the back of the room, and now today you're here, championing human empowerment and mindful leadership. And I know you mentioned that for you was important to show up and to be more visible. But I would like to go deeper and tell us more, how was your journey? How did you manage to go from that girl in the room, shy in the room, to where you are now?
So I think it's really the big piece of it was self-compassion and practicing that acceptance towards myself. The other thing I will say that I'm a big believer in is discipline. And I'll tell you how that connects. When it comes to confidence, you look at, okay, what is confidence? Confidence comes from the Latin word confidere, which means to trust. To build our confidence, we need to create that self-trust, that I can trust myself, that I will, when I give myself that assurance that I can keep my word, I will do what I say I will do. And I do that over and over and over and over again. Over time, that's how you build self-confidence. So for me, it was interesting because discipline is also the pathway to self-mastery. And for me, I realized discipline was also that thing that helped me build my confidence. So according to ancient wisdom and philosophy, there are 3 different kinds of discipline that we can all practice that will give us that sense of self-mastery as well as confidence. One is structural discipline. Structural discipline is for you to look at your day and think about, how can I structure my day so that it supports me in showing up as the best version of myself? What do I need to do in the morning? Do I meditate? Do I journal? Do I engage in prayer? Whatever is that practice for you, so you show up as your best self. How do you approach your workday? How do you end your day? Do you end it with gratitude? Do you end it with quality time with your family? What allows you to really end the day well? Because that then connects back to the next morning, how you wake up feeling. So structural discipline. I, on a daily basis now, I started with one habit, but now today in my journal, I track 21 different habits every single day. And that's worked wonders for me, because again, it's about creating those wins for yourself. Through every check, you're affirming your identity, that this is who I am, because I'm showing up as this again and again, and that really has helped me build my confidence. So first, structural discipline. 2, reactive discipline, the discipline to whatever triggers we see in our environment, whether it's from individuals or from the circumstances in our life, the discipline to not react, to get triggered and react impulsively, but to create space between that trigger and yourself so that you can respond thoughtfully. Viktor Frankl said between a stimulus and response is a space, and in that space lies our growth and our freedom. So the more and more through my training I was able to create this space, the more freedom I could experience in showing up as myself. And the third and final discipline is expansive discipline, which is the discipline to say that I am going to look at everything in my life as a tool for my personal growth. So any challenge I come across, any challenge in my career from another individual, whatever it is, I'm going to look at that and ask, how do I use this for my growth? How do I, in the face of challenge, lean into that and choose growth rather than retreat back into safety and comfort? So for me, it was a constant journey of every day asking myself, how do I lean into these challenges in my life more and more and more? How do I push myself, take more risks, more and more and more? And the more I did that, the more I grew in my confidence as well.
Wow, so much value there, so much to unpack. So first it's about the self-discipline. You start with yourself, structural discipline. Then you learn not to react, but how to respond to the situations. And then the third is about how can you expand in your life, the different areas in your life.
Yes.
That's so good. You are in a good direction. And I want to go deeper.
Yes.
You mentioned also in one of your posts on social media, which I really liked, there was an important moment in your life where you stopped comparing yourself to others. And even you had research on that and how that changed your life. Maybe can you elaborate on that?
Yes. So comparison, oh gosh, is the thing that feeds into our self-doubt. And so much of this, again, is because of conditioning. I remember, I believe I was in middle school, and I think in 6th or 7th grade, and I had won this award of most improved student in drama. And I remember feeling quite proud of that because, like I mentioned, I was a shy kid. And for me to get an award for being more expressive it was something I was quite proud of. And I remember I invited my father came to the award ceremony, and after the ceremony was over, we were walking home, and I was like, as any kid, I was desperately waiting for him to say something to validate the whole experience. And he turns around and says, you know, you have to work harder. Did you see there were kids in there who had won 4, 5, 6 awards, and you only got one? You have to work harder. And look, I love my dad. In fact, my strongest values come from my father, especially the discipline that I was talking about. So I don't fault him, because as most parents, we think the way to motivate others is by comparison. And then we all internalize this, and we think the way to motivate ourselves is by comparison. I only have a right to like myself if I believe I'm doing better than others. And so I carried that with me for so long, and it just fed into this sense of unworthiness in me whenever I felt like I wasn't doing as good as others. So I don't think it was so much a singular moment, but more like a growing realization over time that we're actually all on our own journey. The thought experiment that I always encourage people to try is think of 10 people you know. Ask them where they began their journey. How many answers would you get? 10 different answers. Some began their journey with a lot of focus and drive, knowing exactly what they're going to do in their life. There are others, like me, who took a long time to find their path in life. There's some who grew up with a lot of resources. There are others who struggled. Now, go back to the same 10 people and ask them, what is their end point? What is the end game? How many answers would you get? Again, 10 different answers. For some, they want to retire early, want to retire rich. Others are waiting for some pinnacle in their career. And then there's those who never want to stop working like me. Third, now go back to the same 10 people and ask them how they measure success in their life. How many answers would you get? Again, 10 different answers. Some of us want a lot of fame and acclaim. Some of us want material success. Some of us simply are measuring our success based on how well we raise our children. It's different for each of us. So here's the thing. In any game, to pick winners and losers, you need three things. You need a common starting point, a common end point, and a common way of measuring success or performance. In life, rarely would you ever be in a situation where all three conditions are met. I love the way actually how Naval Ravikant phrased it. Life is a single player game. It's a single player game. We're not competing with anyone. We're not comparing ourselves to anyone and find that that's the thing that is going to help us. We get to choose what game we're playing. We get to choose how long we want to play it. We get to choose how we measure our success. So the more and more I think I've been looking at my life as a single player game, the more also it's just helped me find that confidence, that peace of mind as well.
So this is something that what you're mentioning really breaks my heart. See people with so much potential. So much potential. But when we start comparing ourselves to others, we start questioning ourselves. And I love what you said. It's like you cannot compare. It's completely different. So I love what you do, like when we focus on ourselves, on our strengths, and on our purpose, we become really powerful.
Yeah.
And I think that's what you did, and really well. So well done.
Yeah. Thank you. It's a journey.
Yeah.
It's a journey for all of us.
I agree. So a lot of people are in their journey. So now you could leave some tips for let's say managers and leaders who are watching. Like, what are the 3 tips that you can give for someone who wants to start or go or deepen their journey into mindful leadership?
So here is one small thing, but a really powerful thing that we can all do to increase our self-awareness and to live and lead mindfully is to engage in some kind of daily introspection. All self-aware leaders, individuals, doesn't matter, practice some form of daily introspection. So the first question I would encourage everyone to ask is, imagine yourself at the end of your life, on your deathbed, if you will, and ask yourself, how do you want to be remembered? If there are 1 or 2 or 3 words that you want everyone to think of when they hear your name, what would they be? What would those be? Would you want to be remembered as someone who's kind, someone who's courageous, someone who was a fearless leader, someone who led life with a lot of integrity? I think for each of us, we have to decide what that is for us. And when you find that clarity around, okay, this is going to be my true north. I want to craft myself, create myself into this kind, courageous, and disciplined individual. A practice that I do, and I know a lot of people do, is to make that come alive every single day of your life. So begin your day by reflecting on, how would I like to show up today? How am I going to practice kindness or courage today? And then at the end of the day, ask that same question again. How did I show up today? How kind was I today? How courageous was I today? And how can I continue to practice this tomorrow? I think day after day, if you keep that alive through that daily introspection, that is what fosters that self-awareness. That is what then creates that alignment between what is most important to you and how you are living your life and how you are showing up.
So that's a huge one. Yeah. I think before you mentioned that you have 21 habits that you track on a day.
Yes.
For a lot of people can be a bit of a shock, but I also do the same, and I have a daily practice, because that's the beginning of self-awareness and discipline. What you mentioned. So that's so nice what you mentioned. I think I wouldn't like to end this conversation. I think I could see the passion for your passion on women empowerment and equality. Like, what is the one thing that you would love to see happening in the world so that we have a more equal world?
I think what we all need to practice, what we will all benefit from practicing for ourselves and for everybody else, is radical acceptance. Radical acceptance. What is that? Radical acceptance is where we go beyond judgment of good and bad for ourselves or for anybody else, but we first begin with acceptance, starting with ourselves. And it's interesting, Carl Rogers had said, the curious paradox is, when I accept myself just as I am, then I change. So even if change is the aspiration, it first begins with, I accept myself, I accept my life, my everything, the sum total of who I am fully. So we practice acceptance towards ourselves. So we practice that radical acceptance towards others. Whatever the differences, whatever the background, we just accept, appreciate, and value those differences. And when you're really coming from a place of mindfulness, I practice radical acceptance with this moment right here, this moment, this present moment. I accept it fully. Because if you don't, then we're always going to be looking for happiness somewhere else. Happiness will always be, it's in the next moment or the next moment after that, but it's never here. And if it's never here, we're always going to be searching and searching and searching, and our whole lives pass us by that way. So radical acceptance of this moment, of ourselves and each other.
So nice. So we're coming to the end of the show.
Yes.
Show full of value and emotions, but now I would like to ask you, so people ask you a lot of questions. What is one question that people normally they don't ask you and you would love to answer?
I think let's say if that question is what is really my ultimate message that I would love to leave everyone with, and what I believe would be what has been the way I've lived my life as well, is that I think ultimately, if we all focus on self-mastery and really make showing up as our best selves, the true north, along with focusing on the well-being of others, that will always, always, always lead us to greater happiness, greater peace of mind, and greater success. I remember Edmund Hillary, who climbed Mount Everest for the first time. After he had successfully climbed Mount Everest, he was asked, you know, here you are, you've climbed the summit in the world, the highest summit, how do you feel? And he thought about it and he said, you know, it's not so much about conquering a mountain as it is about conquering ourselves. And I think living and leading mindfully is very much about that, about conquering ourselves so we can show up more fully for ourselves and each other.
Wow. And that's it. I loved so much our conversation. It was wonderful to imagine that little girl in the back of the room, shy, and now seeing you here with so much passion, with a lot of purpose, wanting to empower women and to help women. And also it was really nice to see the necklace that you're using, seeing there's also a meaning that the answers were always with you, as you mentioned. And I think I love how you are practicing self-mastery and at the end, showing up every day at your best. It was awesome. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, Rodrigo. It was such a delight to be here. And thank you so much for creating a platform such as this, where people like me can come and spread these messages that we're passionate about, that can hopefully help others live and lead more mindfully. So thank you for all the great work that you are doing in the world. So yes, it was an absolute pleasure.
Thank you. There are voices that need to be heard, like Bhavna. And I want to amplify these voices. And you can help by subscribing below.